I usually stand at the back and do the signals like this, but we didn't plan that. Terry, you've been very patient.
Glad to be here.
Terry is our next speaker. I'll leave this tall because you're much taller than me, I think. Terry is going to speak on, I won't go on because we'll get right to it, the Hensley Cutoff on the California Trail. All yours, Terry.
Back. Yeah, put it around. How we doing? All right. I was just gonna get this. You're a little taller. Been here for a few hours like you, and I've drawn a conclusion. I'm not sure any place I'd rather have been this morning than right here. You know, everywhere you go, you talk to somebody, you got a friend. And lots of good things going on, and all the work here that did with the horseshoeing and the metal work. Enjoyed just sitting and watching them and what craftsmanship is shown with this. I knew an individual one time who had received his doctor's degree in philosophy from Harvard. And he went on a church construction project, just a little remodel thing, and he said to the guy next to me, first thing he did is got a handful of nails and threw them in his mouth. And he says, I learned from that experience is you see someone with a mouth full of nails, when he's through, you better listen to him because he knows some things that you don't. And I watched the farrier do that this morning, and grateful for the craftsmanship that was there. Grateful for association with Eli. We've known each other for several years. One day he called up and said, hey, I want you to come and show me something on the trail out west here. And maybe I can show you something. Boy, you never turn anything down like that for someone who likes pioneer trails. And so we did, and long story, but we went way west and come back, and we traveled 10, 15 miles. And he says, you know what? I want to go to Donner Springs. Well, that's back the other way. So he turns around in the middle of the road, goes back, and we get clear down to Donner Springs. He says, you know what? I need to tell you something. I don't have enough gas to get home. And so we end up going on to Wendover, which is another 25 miles, and then came home. And I thought about that. Enjoy people that are craftsmen. Enjoy people that don't mind risking running out of gas. Enjoy being with people that don't mind getting stuck. And I love being with people who enjoy the beauties of the land. Our Crossroads chapter of Octo is taking a group tour out west out here, and we stopped at a place and we're just looking. If you look at this map there, I'm going to make reference to this frequently because that's our visual. When Eli asked me to do this, in my mind popped, I'd do a PowerPoint on that. And then he says, we're going to do it in a tent. And I said, well, I'm not going to do a PowerPoint on that. So there's a lot of information crammed onto this one page. But you look at the picture that's just above Hensley's head, Pilot Springs. We were at a place that was looking not far, many miles from that. They were looking over and just standing there. And the lady next to me says, isn't that beautiful? And I turned and looked at her. She wasn't talking to anyone. She just expressed what was in her heart. This is beautiful. There wasn't a red flower, nothing yellow. It was the fall, the muted autumn tones out there. And I looked on a map, and I don't think you would find two houses that were being lived in year-round in 200 miles straight south of that place. You get clear down west of Cedar City before you find a house. That's the desert. But isn't that beautiful? Enjoy people that use the beauty. People on the trail. People on the trail enjoyed the beauty. You look at that, I'm making reference to that same picture. I promise you that those pioneers, the Hensley Trail, they stopped at Emigrant Springs. One, they had beautiful cold water at that spot. And two, they looked out and saw the scene that was before them. And the one thing that would be really have them focused was it was the only place on the trail between Salt Lake and City of Rocks that you could see the Great Salt Lake. Now, would that draw your attention? You think of the places that we've all been that had something really extra special. We sit and we look. You know, you go to Grand Canyon and look over, it doesn't make you want to talk. And lots of other places. I actually think of Fitzpatrick, Mountain Man. You'll hear a little bit about him tomorrow. But Fitzpatrick is credited with being the first white person to see Yosemite. He dies. What does he have printed on his gravestone? I camped at Yosemite. It made such a profound influence upon him. You look to the left there and you see the thing that's called the Twin Sisters. Now imagine people from the flatlands of America, and they've made their way across, but they come across those two rock pinnacles. And that's where the trails meet between the Hensley Cutoff, the Salt Lake Cutoff, same thing, and the California Trails within sight of that. It's just a little further down the road, but clearly in sight. A lot of people mention that. There was Merrill Mattis, who's the guru of the trail along the Platte River. He read 750 journals and then wrote a book. And he said the most often mentioned geologic feature along the trail was Chimney Rock. Everybody mentioned that. Some of them said they wrote in their journal, I could see Chimney Rock this afternoon. We'll pass it tomorrow by noon. They wrote that down there. 2 days later, they wrote they passed Chimney Rock. It was hard for them to gauge distance and how unusual it was for them to be able to have an experience of seeing that kind of beauty. Some said they got to Scotts Bluff. Most beautiful place, scenic, geologic feature I've ever seen in all my life. Oh, they enjoyed the beauty. They enjoyed the land that's there. I'm going to do a little sidebar here. You notice that Twin Sisters in the plain there? You see the vegetation, a few trees spread around, but what's the vegetation? Sagebrush. We all know about sagebrush. Now I'm going to show you an item here. Years ago, I was a crazy horse's monument is being carved in the hills out in Dakota, and I picked up this thing, and it's a matrix of, across the top is ailments, toothache, headache, abdominal pain, cuts, bruises, all kinds of things. Down the side here is the plant that the Native Americans used for this particular illness. And wherever the dots meet out here, that's what they used. So it's an interesting item. And so I looked, I was quite interested in what was used most. And so you come across here and you find a row of dots here that include such thing as sore throat, snake bites, sprains, stomach cramps, stomach pains, swelling, various other things that you could have. And the plant used was sagebrush. And so a lot of their medication was already here when they got here, despite what they bred. And this is a very interesting, and I just say, now, my father was born in 1888. When I was a lad, they used to send me out west to the farm, which is only down the road a few miles, and to get the tops of the fresh sagebrush growths, they'd take it in and have Mom make sage tea. And then he'd drink a glass of it. I want to tell you, I'd blow your head off. There's no such thing as enough sugar to sweeten up sage tea. But he was a part of that world. He grew up in Wyoming frankly as a cowboy, and during the turn of the 1900s, and so that was part of it. I showed there's a lot can be done with it. I showed just a couple of sage gentlemen here. And they said, I'd like a copy of that. So we've done a little work, and we found, yes.
$10 for a black and white copy. I can get them here locally.
$10? Okay. If anyone would like a copy of this, Steve back there has done some research, and it looks like $10. Now, the price tag is still on the back. I paid $3.50 for it. My problem is it's been nearly 40 years since I bought it. So Steve is not looking to do anything, but if any of you are interested, he has made a contact with a place who will make a copy of that and have it ready to do it for us tomorrow. If you'd raise your hands. Now, I'll just say this. We want to cover the expenses, and whatever's left over goes to Eli.
Got one over here.
Looks like we're running close to 15. Send them up, get it. Let Steve talk to him. You'll hear from Steve tomorrow.
Yeah, looks like about 15
One
folks.
here and one here.
So I'll make 15, 16.
15?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have them for you tomorrow at the county fairgrounds. When I'm doing my presentation.
There's 2.
Okay, I'll make 20.
All right. We make 20, so if some of your wife talks you into it, we can go ahead and do it. So we're going to talk about, you keep this picture in hand. You can look at it. I'm going to make a reference to it. I want to make a comment, and I've already alluded to this idea, but look at the quote I put in there by David McCullough. Now, David McCullough is worth listening to. History, I like to think, is a large way of looking at life. It is a source of strength, of inspiration. It is about people, and they speak to us across the years. And just stop and look, and be in a place. There's a spirit of place, and you know, we're on the Hensley Trail right here. We don't have to point anywhere except here. And if you want to see one of the markers, if you walk around Eli's house down there and down to the other end of his lawn, you'll see a T-rail marker. You see a T-rail marker in the Pilot Springs. Ours and a predecessing organization puts up those markers. We've got somewhere around 130 of them. We've got them all documented on the different trails to try and preserve that. Years ago, a couple of individuals, Gibb Smith and Malin, decided to mark the Hensley Cutoff. If you look at your map there, the blue triangles, there are the markers that we have that mark the trail, largely because of him and some of the predecessors. And so we owe that as part of history that we can enjoy. And in fact, Malin worked for the government and did forest mapping. And he contacted somebody new, and he has U2 flyover maps of this area across here, done specifically so they could do layovers with the trails that go across here. That's one of the things that we have a great deal of here in Utah is the trails. You know, the people they don't want to stay in Utah. The only ones that want to stay was the Mormons. Everybody else is a place to get through. And what do they run into? They run into the Great Basin. They run into the desert. And above all, they run into the Great Salt Lake. And so they had to get around it. So there's 3 trails south. The Central Overland, the Pony Express, and the Hastings Trail is south of the lake. You come up here and you have the Bidwell Bartleson. You'll hear some for that for tomorrow from Steve. And the Hensley Cutoff. The Hudspeth Cutoff is just across the border into southern Idaho and then to Fort Hall. quarter to a third of a million people went across here. Very popular cross. So there's lots of stories and interesting things that you can go learn about with this. In Salt Lake, they heard that Hensley, who you notice if we follow his trail originally, you get to Salt Lake and there's the black dots that go out there. He decided he's going to follow the Hastings Cutoff, and he goes out there, and he's doing fine. He's got 10 men. They're on horses, no wagons, and they're heading out across there, and it starts to rain, and they start to sink. And it got bad enough, if you can imagine this, it got bad enough they threw all their goods, all their luggage. That's the only way they could save their animals. And it took them 2 days to get out of it. They came back to Salt Lake. They had to recruit their animals. They had to replenish their goods and said, hey, we're not going to try that again. Now, if it hadn't rained, they'd made it, because there's plenty of groups that made it, using horses especially. But then they started up the way out of Salt Lake. And the first marker there, just on the north side of Salt Lake, is at a Warm Springs. And just insert here, not saying more later, but there are 5 warm springs in that line of markers up there. 5 of them, they could have a warm bath. And how enjoyable that must have been. The one in Salt Lake is north end of town. The Mormons used that all the time. Every other day was women, every other day was the men. That's where they got bad. And then they keep going north. You can see a listing of hot springs there. And these people that followed the Hensley Cutoff, and you can see the numbers there, what a blessing it was to the Mormons in the valley here, because they came in and they need supplies replenished. Some of their very fine animals that they had money to buy in the Midwest, by the time they got here, they were jaded and needed rest. They didn't want to rest. There's gold out there to be found. And you see there 15 to 25,000 in 49 and 50 alone followed this trail. And came right here to this spring, right here. We all can look at. And it was a good spring. Eli tells me that your grandmother built this house. They got the water out of that spring, tested very good. Now it's called Salt Creek. So you know what happens when it keeps flowing out here. But right here, what a blessing it was, because it's 14 miles to the nearest next water in here. So they camped. There would be a camping space that would be very, very important here. One of the other things I think about, and this again along the Hensley Cutoff, as they're going north there, you can see up Honeyville. I think this is where this particular item was written. He says, we asked this trivia question. What was the most, Mattis uses this word, vexatious creature that the pioneers had to deal with? Mosquitoes. Mosquitoes. It wasn't bears or coyotes or any snakes or anything else, all of that. Here's something he says here. I'll back up just a little. The grass is covered with crickets. Now this is along the Hensley here. As large as a man's thumb. These are dried and used in winter by the Indians for food. We were almost devoured by mosquitoes during the night, distance 18 miles. Next day, it says, the mosquitoes were so fierce that we were obliged to suspend our culinary operations. How's that for verbiage? Suspend our culinary operations. There's a lot of other ways to say that. And make a hasty supper of hard bread. They didn't even cook anything because the mosquitoes were so bad. The next day, 2 days later, one of our mules, taking fright today, lost a tin pan. Indispensable article to us, leaving us, whatever size the group, only a frying pan to cook with. Now that's, if you lost a pan, you just get back in the cupboard, you'd already notice it. But think of that. Think of that. As they keep going, you'll notice something kind of unique about this. And the trail goes up to Hampton's Ford. Now tomorrow night we go to Hampton's Ford. You'll be at a very wonderful, beautiful historic site with lots of stories, lots of meaning there as we go to that play that's there right on the site, same parking lot. But as they get there, they end up crossing the Bear River, and then they keep going north, and yet they want to come back to here. Why did they go north? It's that Malad River. So you cross the Bear River, which can be 120, 150 yards wide, and then they get to the Malad, which is only a few yards wide, but all the bank is like this, muddy bottom and steep out. And it drives them further north up till they get to Gravelly Ford, and then they come back in their next place. Incidentally, they find Warm Springs right there. In their next place to find a spot to camp is right here. We're here. We're on the site, and so that's where it comes around the mountain down there, as you can see. Then they head out through here. You can see, those of you that came in along I-84, you followed the track. It goes like this, and there are maps. We have that show where it crisscrossed, and it goes out and goes. It talks about one particular place out there. It says that what a godsend this water was. And it's called Dilly Springs. You saw the marker on the side of the road, because that's the turnoff. No, all there is a ranch house there. But on the side of the hill, not flushing out with, beautiful rocks, things. On the side of the hill, there was just a stream came out. And I talked about how very, very beautiful it was. That they kept going, obviously, to the west, and they find the Pilot Springs. You see the picture of it there that we made reference to. They go on to the Twin Sisters, the Hensley route that meets the route there that comes out of California. That route came out of Fort Hall down the Snake River to where the Raft River runs in to the Snake River, and then they came south down through Malta. And so there's a place out there. We always drive past Malta too, you don't know. But you go over there, and there's a place over there where it's marked, and the California Road, the Hudspeth Road that comes across southern Idaho here, and the Hensley Cutoff all meet. And so it's very interesting in the event sort of situation with those people out there. And then they go on, and they're going down the Humboldt River. Okay? The Humboldt's been traveled by Hastings and others. And while the Hensley Company is going that way, here comes a remnant portion of the Mormon battalion coming back from their long march, and they're anxious to get home. So they run across Hensley, and Hensley says, there's a shorter way than going to Fort Hall, because that's what they planned on doing. Hitting the Raft River, going north up Fort Hall, and back down past Malad. There's a shorter way. Do you think they were interested? So they cut off, and they come across, and they came through here on their way back, and then other remnants did. The difference was, the one thing question that was really heavy for the Mormon battalion to the Hensley was, can you take a wagon? You've got to have different terrain for wagons than you do. And the answer was yes. And that's what opened it up. There are a few places, you need to be shown where it is, but there are a few places you can still see the wagon marks out west of here. You pass it, and it's right near Rattlesnake Pass. There's signs on both sides of Rattlesnake Pass. The Hensley Cutoff was vastly important. The one thing that the Mormons did was is they made whatever little improvement there needed to be made on this particular route to make it passable by wagons. And just a note related, the Mormons were good at that. When they came across the plains, they made more improvements for the road. If they camped near a stream for a night and there's a side of the hill need to be dug out, they go over and do that as an evening detail because their cousins were coming behind and other church members. They would help build bridges and make road improvements. And you can go all around the West and you find that kind of thing taking place where they built for other people. That's one of the distinctions. Draw the contrast that's recorded in the 49ers would build a raft to get across the road and then send the raft down the stream because they didn't want the group that's behind them to get to their gold spot first, you see. So a lot about human nature. We owe a lot to the pioneers. We owe a lot to the Hensleys group. 10 men going out on horseback, but pioneered a way that led to the making of a very, very important road in the travel of the people in the East to get to California. And there's my talk. I'm thankful for the opportunity to tell you just a little bit about that. If you want to look at this, that's fine. Or this marker of the trails up here. Thank you. Thank you. Any question or anything? I'm at the end of my time, but good. Thank you.